I'm Greg Kochanowski. I'm a studio director at Rios Clemente Hale Studios. I'm an architect and aspiring landscape architect. I've been studying the wildland-urban interface for about 5 years now, and really looking at how to practice sort of transdisciplinarily within that region. As part of that research, I spoke at ASLA last year in October, and in November, our community, Seminole Springs in Gore Hills, was destroyed. And so our home was destroyed, as well as our community members, about 110 families. And so it's sort of given a level of urgency to this research. So with that, I'll go on the speed date here. So the first thing is, what am I passionate about? I'm really passionate about this relationship between urban conditions and sort of wilderness, and ways in which transdisciplinary practice can actually mitigate architecture, landscape, and urbanism cannot solve any one of those things. You need to look at a symbiosis or a sort of holistic approach. In Los Angeles, there's the climate crisis is really talked about in terms of flooding, but really we have the fire, sort of flooding and landslide sequencing that we see in Los Angeles every year. And we live within the sort of arid region of the United States, which is now expanding at a sort of rate. This is where it was in that map, and now it's migrated 140 miles east. This is my community. After the Woolsey fire, we live right smack dab in the Santa Monica Mountains as part of the wildland-urban interface zone, which you can see here in red, which actually extends outside the mountain range and into certain areas of the urban environment. I think what we need to look at here is that these are places where people live, and that people have lived with fire for decades. And this is a slide of the history of fires. This is going to go really fast. But really looking at how we begin to mitigate some of those fires. This is the destruction of the woodlands over the course of through California. But instead of looking at sort of fire suppression, we really need to look at land management in a much smarter way, similar to the Native Americans. Following that, really are these issues of debris flows. These are issues from the Thomas Fire and the homes destroyed during that process. And so there's a design proposal here looking at the sequencing of debris flows over the course of time in California. And this is an image from the Thomas Fire in Montecito debris flows. So what we came up with was this strategy. The debris basins in California are all outdated, and there's about as much area as equivalent to Central Park living in Los Angeles County. So instead of one debris basin, we looked at maybe even distributing a series of debris basins over the hillside that worked like a sort of Plinko game that slow down the debris as it goes down. And what it does is that it also gathers up over time and rebuilds the hillside. So you actually reconstitute the hillside as a sort of mountain-making exercise. And in that, the debris basin then goes away and becomes potentially a place for community gardens and other sort of community activities, since these sit directly adjacent to communities. Some images of some of that. I actually get to pause a little bit. But with some of that debris, actually, we could begin to take that and redistribute it through the city of Los Angeles, and actually begin to reconstitute. This is looking at San Gabriel Mountains down to the Verdugo Wash, and this is Olmsted's plan for Los Angeles and this sort of green network. And could this be a process through which we could actually make that plan real, and think about integrating urban wild and urban environments in a kind of sustainable way?